Hello, good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. Restrictions for Johor Polls different than previous state elections. And Sabah takes lead in sustainable palm oil production. More on that coming up. The vaccination of kids aged between 5 and 11 will be done on a voluntary basis, and no restrictions will be imposed on unvaccinated children. Health Minister Khairy says this was to boost the confidence of parents, as the ministry was aware that many of them were taking a wait-and-see approach before enrolling their children in the vaccination program.
Untuk kanak-kanak, mereka tidak ada apa-apa syarat kelonggaran dan sebagainya. Ya, sebab kalau kita meletakkan syarat hanya kanak-kanak yang lengkap vaksin boleh diberi kebebasan kelonggaran, maka itu dilihat bukan secara sukarela lagi dah.
The National COVID-19 Immunization Program for Kids kicked off simultaneously across the country on Thursday for children with comorbidities and immunocompromised. Other children would receive their vaccines through appointment booking at 3 mega PPVs in the Klang Valley. The programs will be expanded to health clinics and schools soon. Khairy says that more curbs will be eased once kids are vaccinated and the booster immunization program reaches a satisfactory level.
Ada yang lain ni agak reluctant, tetapi saya merayu sebab kita nak buka sempadan kita, banyak benda lagi yang kita nak mengesyorkan supaya kita dapat memberi kelonggaran, tetapi saya perlukan kerjasama daripada mereka yang belum lagi mendapat dos penggalak. Sila dapatkan dos penggalak.
Meanwhile, the health minister also says that COVID-19 restrictions for the upcoming Johor state elections will be different than previous elections held under the pandemic.
SOP Melaka berjaya, tidak ada spike. SOP Sarawak berjaya, tidak ada spike. SOP di Johor ni lain sikit sebab dia datang sekali dengan Omicron. So to say that there will not be a spike, I won't commit that because there will be an Omicron spike. But apa yang kita nak lihat daripada Johor ini adalah dari segi keseriusan kes, kemasukan ke hospital tidak meningkat dengan mendadak. But there will be a rise in cases.
In other news, Malaysia's palm oil industry has been plagued with accusations of poor environmental practices, facing threats of boycotts from developed nations. To address these concerns, oil palm certifications on sustainable practices have been introduced, and Sabah is taking the lead to get everyone on board. State Forestry Department's Chief Conservator, Dato' Frederick Hugen, tells us the plan.
Well, this initiative basically is to get our oil palm certified on a statewide basis, yeah, and it is not the initiative by one agency or one entity, but it is an initiative by 15 others, yeah, government, NGOs, and of course the private sectors, and basically this aims to obtain certification by 2025 on all oil palm in the state. And of course, this is to be carried out based on the certification that is internationally recognized at present, which is the RSPO, Roundtable Sustainable Palm Oil, and also MSPO, Malaysian Sustainable Palm Oil Standards. So this has been, in a way, agreed by the state government then as one of the initiatives to go forward.
The initiative is called the Jurisdictional Certification of Sustainable Palm Oil, or JCSPO. Under this plan, Sabah adopts the Malaysian Sustainable Palm Oil MSPO certification standard as it moves towards getting all stakeholders and planters, big and small, to embrace the more internationally accepted Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil RSPO certification regime and making it mandatory by 2025.
Some of this will have to go down to the ground and then, of course, to the level at the state level, because land and forest is state matters. So there's certain areas that actually that has to be addressed by the state themselves. Yeah. And I think through this initiative, I think hopefully that we can come up with the standards certification standards which is interpreted locally that could be implemented in order to guide further development oil palm based on the best practice or best standards that we have, based on national or even international standard. I think more important is that to make sure that market recognize it.
More on that after the break.
Selamat datang ke Yang Mana Satu Idaman You. Jika anda ada RM109, mana satu yang anda mahu? 90 saluran Astro atau internet laju? Persoalannya, kenapa you kena pilih kalau semuanya ada dengan bundle jimat, internet laju dan 90 saluran Astro hanya RM109 sebulan sahaja? Kan? Call 03-7481-3000 sebelum promosi habis.
Bahmun semua padian, lihatlah Awani Borneo jam 7 malam setiap hari, banyak berita-berita cerita kita ni hanya di Astro Awani.
Welcome back. Around the world, consumer pressure are forcing more companies to adopt stricter sustainability and zero deforestation policies in its palm oil supply chain. Sabah Forestry Chief Conservator Frederick Coogan explains how the department is supporting this agenda.
One of the main thrusts of the jurisdictional approach is, of course, to ensure that it is conflict-free and it is also abide by the environmental standards and procedures. And then, of course, here in the jurisdictional certification itself, we are coupling it with the certification, with the conservation efforts that has been carried out by the state, or even has been targeted. For example, in Sabah, we have set aside. We set objectives in order to get 30% of the state under totally protected areas by 2025 as well. And as of today, we have managed to gazetted or set aside, I think, 1.9 million hectares. So that's about 19%. Sorry, that's about 19% of the state landmass as totally protected areas, and we tend to achieve about 30%, which is about 2.2 million hectares in by 2025. And I think this is one way to couple it with conservation efforts, and by doing so, that means we are addressing in terms of land use, that everything is in a balance. And when we say why conflict-free, of course, there are new areas. For example, I think we must ensure that there is no issue of land tenure, for example. One example, there's no issue of land encroachment, for example. So these are matters that need to be addressed at the state level.
The Mahmeri have long been at risk of displacement due to rapid coastal development. Tonight on Consider This, we speak to anthropologist Kamal Sulhaimi Fadzil and economist Dr. Nias Asadullah about development and inclusion for Orang Asli communities. On to foreign news. New Zealand announces plans to reopen its borders in phases after being largely closed for 2 years due to the pandemic. The country, which has one of the world's strictest border restrictions, will allow Kiwis stranded overseas to come home without having to undergo quarantine in state facilities.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said New Zealand citizens in Australia could return home and self-isolate from February 27. Kiwis elsewhere in the world can do so 2 weeks later. The border restrictions will then be progressively relaxed to allow in other groups such as skilled migrants and international students. They would still have to self-isolate for 10 days. However, all other foreigners will be kept out until October. New Zealand initially planned to start easing border controls last month, but delayed the move due to the Omicron variant.
Meanwhile, Russia has criticized a decision by the U.S. to deploy more than 3,000 troops to Europe to support its NATO allies. Russia's deputy foreign minister calls the step destructive and makes it harder to reach a compromise over Ukraine.
Alexander Grushko said the move by President Joe Biden to deploy extra troops to Germany, Poland and Romania would increase military tension and reduce scope for political decision. Russia has some 100,000 troops near Ukraine, but repeatedly denied it plans to invade. However, Western leaders are skeptical. The Pentagon earlier said the American troops being deployed would not fight in Ukraine, but would ensure the defense of Washington's allies. Ukraine, a former Soviet republic, borders both Russia and the EU. Russia wants assurances that Ukraine will never join the EU-led NATO. However, the U.S. is refusing to bar Ukraine from NATO, saying the sovereign nation should be free to decide on its own security alliances.
At least 20 people died and 74 hospitalized in Buenos Aires after consuming laced cocaine. Argentine officials say they were still determining the toxic substance the cocaine was mixed with.
Authorities issued an urgent warning yesterday after 3 separate hospitals reported several deaths and serious cases of poisoning. Buenos Aires security chief Sergio Berni said there is a key ingredient that is attacking the central nervous system, possibly opioids. About 10 people were arrested after police raided a house in the poor 3 de Febrero neighborhood where they believe the cocaine was sold.
The second day of the Winter Olympics torch relay took place atop the Great Wall of China. Leading the pack of torch bearers were actor Jackie Chan, as well as Chinese Olympic medalists. This is the 4th time the 67-year-old actor has become a torch bearer. Because of the COVID-19 restrictions, the Olympic torch is a much more modest affair, and the flame is traveling a much shorter distance over 3 days before the games kick off tomorrow. The torch is taken to Changjiakou, where most of the Olympic snow events will occur. The relay will conclude with the lighting of the Olympic cauldron at Friday's opening ceremony at Beijing's National Stadium. That's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. For all the latest news updates, head on to astroawani.com or the Astro AWANI app. My name is Saraya Mia. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.